Kahala Yahweh Bashem Yahushai Bashem Rakak Wadash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect who are the house of David, reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, who before losing their true heritage were known as the Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the tribe of Gad, or who are known today as the Native American Indians. But before watching this video, we're going to read this. This is Micah 2:2. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. This is a point I want to highlight here. Oppressing a man and his heritage. What does that mean? That talks about taking away the beliefs and the customs and the traditions that a man holds. Now, when you go through history, you find that this has happened only to the Israelites, the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians throughout history. And it's been predominantly done by the Caucasian race, or who you would know in the Bible as the Edomites. Now, let's go and watch this video so we can get a bit of details of how this went down.
The U.S. has a long and brutal legacy of attempting to eradicate Native Americans. For centuries, they colonized Native American lands and murdered their populations. They forced them west and pushed them into small, confined patches of land. But Native Americans resisted. A Board of Indian Commissioners report said, instead of dying out under the light and contact of civilization, the Indian population is steadily increasing. And that was an obstacle to total American expansion. So the U.S. found a new solution to absorb and assimilate them. It all started with an experiment and a man named Richard Henry Pratt.
He had in his charge some prisoners of war, and he taught these men how to speak English, how to read and write, and how to do labor. He dressed them in military uniforms and basically ran an assimilation experiment. And then he took his results to the federal government and said, they're capable of being civilized. So he was able to get this project funded.
In 1879, the government funded Pratt's project, the first ever off-reservation boarding school for Native American children. His motto was to kill the Indian and save the man. What started there at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School was nothing short of genocide, disguised as American education. Children were forcibly taken from reservations and placed into the school, hundreds, even thousands of miles away from their families. They were stripped of their traditional clothing, their hair was cut short. They were given new names and forbidden from speaking their native languages.
To take our children and to indoctrinate them into Western society, to take away their identity as indigenous peoples, their tribal identity. I think it's one of the most effective and insidious ways that the U.S. did do harm to indigenous peoples here, because it targeted our children, our most vulnerable. And they tried to make us ashamed for being Indian, and they tried to make us something other than Indian.
There are also accounts of mental, physical, and sexual abuse, of forced manual labor, neglect, starvation, and death.
My great-grandfather went to Carlisle, and nobody in my family ever talked about it. So if you Google Indian boarding schools, the majority of the pictures that you will see will be actually from Carlisle. Colonel Pratt created propaganda. He hired a photographer to create those before and after photos to show that his experiment was working. So it was, intentional propaganda.
And it worked. The Carlisle model of education swept the country and led to the creation of over 350 boarding schools to assimilate Native American children.
On the one hand, we have the Navajo as refinding in the desert. Few of these boys and girls have ever seen a white man. Yet, through the agencies of the government, they are being rapidly dropped from their state of comparative savagery and barbarism to one of civilization.
In 1900, there were about 20,000 Native American children in these schools. By 1925, that number more than tripled. Families that refused to send their kids to these schools faced consequences like incarceration at Alcatraz or the withholding of food rations. Some parents who did lose their children to these schools even camped outside to be close to them. Many students ran away. Some found ways to hold on to their languages and cultures. Others, though, could no longer communicate with family members. And some never returned home at all. By stripping the children of their Native American identities, the U.S. government had found a way to disconnect them from their lands. And that was part of the U.S. strategy. During the same era in which thousands of children were sent away to boarding schools, a number of U.S. policies infringed on their tribal lands back home. In less than 5 decades, 2/3 of Native American lands had been taken away.
The whole thing was purposeful, and the fact that it has been buried in the history books and not acknowledged is also intentional. And in fact, the same tactics were used in New Zealand, Australia, Canada. All of these countries have acknowledged, apologized, or reconciled in some way, except for the United States.
Over time, the brutality of boarding schools started to surface. And after a 1928 report detailed the horrific conditions at some schools, many began to close. In the 1960s, indigenous activism rose alongside the civil rights movement. And by the 1970s, that activism forced more schools to shut down. The government handed over control of the remaining boarding schools to tribes to be run in partnership with the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
So it's always whiteness is the standard for success, and everything else is judged by that standard.
So I'm going to stop it there. But you see, so with this video, it demonstrates the system that got put into place to dismantle the Gadites' ancestry, so that way they would lose themselves, as it tells you in let's get it real quick. This is Jeremiah 17:4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. And you see that curse was put on the Israelites for going off and not following the Lord, right? And that's who the Native Indians are. See, they weren't just some savages that you Caucasians found over here in the land, right? Along with the Latinos. They are the children of the Lord. It tells you here in Genesis 49:19, it says, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. And that's the Gadites. That's their prophecy, man. These are the children of Yahweh, Hashem Yahushai. Yahweh being the correct Hebrew name of the Most High, and Yahushai being the name of his only begotten Son, the Messiah, right? And these are the family of the Messiah, right? These are the children of the Lord, and this is what these devils did to them, man. They took away their heritage, as it was prophesied to happen, right? And another prophecy which happened is that they would be overtaken by a troop. And that's exactly what happened to these people, man. But what else did it say? It says they shall overcome in the end. And how are they overcoming? Because you see, these Native Indians, they're starting to realize that they are the Hebrew Israelites, right? Here are some Indians who understand that they are the Gadites. Let's go ahead and listen to them.
I guess there's so many things in the traditions, the customs, the spirituality, that just go beyond coincidence.
For example, my people's traditional name, the Cherokee's traditional name for ourselves is Anikatuaya, which means the principal people of Yah.
And the Cheyenne tribe in America is called themselves Tzitzit, which means people of the fringes.
Really?
You know, and her cousin tribe, the Shoshone, whose symbol is a rose, we find Shoshana, which is a rose.
Yeah,
We have Hebrew words in our language. celebrations of new moon festivals.
My people have many things in common as far as the traditions and sacred things concerning, for example, there was a celebration of new moon. There was a 7th day of rest. We didn't eat swine. There were cities of refuge. We celebrated 7 sacred feasts during the year. And so there were many commonalities that we found.
So you see, that's the overcoming, because these people are waking up again. This is an Edomite here pretending to be these people over here, right? But let's go back to Micah and finish off the rest of it to find out what's going to happen to these people who did this to the children of Israel, namely the tribe of Gad. This is Micah 2 and 3. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, behold, against this family do I devise an evil from which ye shall not remove your necks, neither shall ye go haughtily, for this time is evil. And that day shall one take up a parable against you and lament with a doleful lamentation and say, we be utterly spoiled. He hath changed the portion of my people. How hath he removed it from me? Turning away, he hath divided our field. Therefore, thou shalt have none that shall cast a cord by lot in the congregation of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Prophesy ye not, say they to them, they prophesy, they shall not prophesy to them, that they shall not take shame. And you see, that's what's happening, man. You got all these people, all these movements, like I told you in the video, since the 60s, you had the Latinos, the Native Indians, so-called Negroes, wake up and start coming out with these power movements. Because the children of Israel started waking up around that time, man. And this is ultimately the evil that these devils aren't going to be able to remove their necks from, man. It's going to be the nuclear missiles, which are going to be coming when World War III starts, man. Because all these other nations are going to throw or launch missiles here on Babylon and Israel and all these other Caucasian nations to take them all out, right? And those that survive are going to be hunted like cattle and animals by the Israelites that are called up into the clouds, into these chariots, or what you would know as UFOs. And when they come back down, they're going to be changed. They're going to have new bodies. We're going to have a new power that we're going to be able to put the other nations in subjection and hunt down these devils, these Edomites, the so-called Caucasians. And this right here, this actually tells you about it. This is Revelations 11 and 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them being the Israelites, the saved 144,000 plus the 1/3, which means the 1 out of every 3 Negro, Latinos, Native Indians that will be saved because they realize who they are and they come back to the Lord. Come up hither, and they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, or a UFO, and their enemies beheld them. Right? Their enemies beheld them. Right? So that's what's coming for you. You messed up, man, because you took the children of the Lord, you took his children away, man, and now we're waking up, and we're going to come back, and we're going to get you back now. So I just wanted to touch upon that. So until the next time, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Ruach Kodash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.